Welcome, everyone. Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. My name is Netatua, and I will be um, helping with today's conversation. We are the Pacific Islander Health Board, and we just have a few guests here and a mental health professional. Today's topic is a tough conversation, so there is a trigger warning on loss, and so pregnancy and infant loss. Um, but I would like to thank everyone for showing up today. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and let everyone introduce themselves by just giving a little background and also checking in on your mental health. How are you arriving in today's space? So, yeah.
Tara.
It's like if
I can start. Aloha, my name is Tara Lawal. I am Native Hawaiian and East Indian. My father's from Fiji and my mom is from Hawaii. I was born and raised here in Seattle, um, and I'm currently the co-chair of the Pacific Islander Health Board and one of the founding members. Um, I'm coming today in a very reflective space. I I had to take some time to just like prepare myself to talk about this topic today. So I've been very quiet for the last hour, reflecting and thinking and looking at resources. So I hope that I can come as a resource. I'm a midwife, a trained midwife, a registered nurse, and I'm finishing up my last year of my doctor of nursing practice. Betty Rose, do you want to go next?
Oh, sure. My name is Betty. I'm one of the outreach coordinators. I always do this every talk story about my postpartum hair returning back. And I am going to co-host with Netta today as we talk about pregnancy and infant loss awareness. And I think I've been a little bit anxious talking about it just because it's triggering, and also because some people haven't dealt with this. If they've experienced it, they may not have talked about it before, so hearing other people tell stories might be overwhelming. I also have my own experience that might come out or might not come out during the discussion, but I think it just is going to be a natural discussion of us having that hard conversation of things that we don't talk about because you're too scared to ask, how are you doing after something, or scared you're going to offend somebody if you ask them about their loss. So probably on the opposite end of Tara, where I was a little bit more chatty and anxious than calm and reserved. So that's me, and I will pass it to Rose.
Hi, I'm Rose from Guam. My dad is actually Filipino. My mom's from Guam, and I'm here to share my experience with about a loss of a baby. And yeah, it's kind of like when Betty asked me a couple of hours ago, or less than 3 hours ago, I think. I just felt it's coming back to me more emotionally now than in the past 30. It's been 31 years, so that baby would have been 31, so in May. So okay. But I'm happy to share it, the experience.
Appreciate that, Rose. I'm Lika Smith. Everyone should know me. I come today unaware that I was going to do this today, and I have never actually talked about my experience, except for saying something happened. It was like casual. And so, Rose, I'm going to really tell you thank you for joining us, and Tara, always for your knowledge. Okay.
Well, thank you. And when we share our stories, feel free to share as little or as much as you want. If you need to step away, because we all know that it's when we get these talks going, the emotions will start flowing. And if you need to step away, go ahead. Um, sorry. Sorry, I have my son with me as well, so you're going to hear him in the background. Hi.
Hi.
But yeah. Before we start, I did want to read something out loud just to acknowledge the losses before we start talking about them. So if everyone's okay with that. Okay. Oh, sorry. I give you this one thought to keep. I am with you still. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the sweet uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft starts that shine at night. Do not think of me as gone. I am with you still in each new dawn. So yeah.
That's so sweet. Thank you, Netta.
Yeah, so you're welcome. I guess we'll go ahead and start with some questions. Uh, I'm like, who? Sorry. I guess for our guest speaker, just wondering, what supported you most through your journey after?
Okay, that would be me, right? So we we still live with my parents back then, and I had a younger sister and a brother that lived with us. So I guess I had my other three kids plus the family around us. So back then, I guess things like that really wasn't talked about, and I guess moved on with just visiting the baby at the gravesite whenever we could, and just always remembering that we had an angel. So I think that's it.
So, Rose, did you lose a preemie baby?
Yes, what happened was in 91. I'm sorry, 1990. I was pregnant with my fourth child that was due in July. And back then, I don't remember things as being trimesters. I only knew it as my ninth month. And during my seventh month, I had gone to the doctor over the weekend because I started having contractions and I knew it was too early. And the doctor said, "Oh, it's just false labor." So they sent me home. I went back the next day and he says again, "Okay, we're going to give you a shot. It's false labor. You're not, blah, blah, blah. Just go home." And so the next day, the third day, I went back and I had an emergency C section. And all I remembered after that was I woke up in my room and it was kind of dark. And I was like, "Where's everybody? Where's the baby?" And when I opened my eyes again, I just asked the nurse, I was like, "Where's my baby?" And no one told me the baby had passed away after 3 hours.
Mm.
All they did was bring the baby to me, had me hold her, which she was still very warm at the time. So it was a baby girl. I had had two girls and a son, and then the fourth child was a baby girl. And the thing was, I remember crying so hard.
That's heartbreaking. And nobody warned you or told you or
Yeah,
comforted.
because here you are thinking it's just another birth, right? Nothing happened during my pregnancy. I never. Well, my first child was forceps. My son, which was my third child, I had preeclampsia,
Mm.
and the doctor had told me I had a bad pelvic; it was crooked. So I never knew that my fourth child had a problem or anything, and I feel like the baby just kept trying to push her way out, but the doctor gave that shot to stop the labor, and I'm like, it still runs through my mind like she fought for her life and she struggled to get out, but they stopped her. And because her lungs weren't developed when she was born, um, I just feel like it could have helped her. Maybe if they didn't give her that shot, you know, she could have probably survived. But the doctors also say the older the baby is like that, it's easier, they say, to take care of a 5 or 6 months old preemie than it is for a 7th or 8th month old, which I don't get. But so that's what they said was her lungs weren't developed enough, and the thing about it was, uh, it was our first death in the family. We've never experienced it with our grandparents or anybody else. It was the first one, and since she was a baby, I never knew in Guam at the private cemeteries they actually had a spot for the.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Rose? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I was thinking we lost her. Did we lose Rose?
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Um,
I'm
wow.
just thinking about the time period too, where she had this. I can't imagine she had much support during those. Well, sorry, processing
Yeah.
her story.
Yeah. Um, Tara, I'm sure you do see a lot of in your medical field work, or I can tell about mine. Mine was kind of a miscarriage. I was pregnant with twins, but I didn't know I was pregnant with twins because every time I'm pregnant with twins, the doctors can't figure it out. But I was close to being three. No, seriously, they can't figure it out. I had to, like, I bet one doctor for the last twins that it was twins because he kept telling me no. Um, but I was almost 3 months pregnant, and all of us, I went to the bathroom, and every blood was everywhere, and I freaked out and started screaming because it was so much blood, and then all of a sudden the pain started coming, and it felt just like labor pains. Everything was so, like, it felt like everything was opening up, and it was time to give birth. And so I rushed to the ER, and they did the exam, and the exam too was so invasive. They use this big tool to do an ultrasound inside you, and you're already cramping, and everything is hurting, and you're terrified because you think God's punishing you. And that's what I thought, was God was punishing me for not being a better person, and that's why I'm losing my baby. So I never actually talked to anybody about it, and I never even told my surviving twin about it until she overheard me telling a friend that Mia was actually a twin. So that was Mia. Um, because I didn't want to scar her, with losing a sibling. Because I thought I was going to be a child psychologist, and all the books that I had done studying said that twins had this connection. But they said that when one twin died, even in miscarriage, that the child still had a connection. But I figured it was because parents were telling their kid that they were a twin, and I never told my daughter that she was a twin because I didn't want her to have that loss. But she had that loss anyway, because she would have nightmares of waking up looking for her other self. And so, but during the miscarriage, the doctor, he gave me a shot. I don't even, like, everything was so chaotic, and I was so scared that he just gave me a shot, told me to go home, that I was probably going to lose the other one too. And so then, all I'm doing for months and months is just praying. Caused a lot of stress in my relationship too, because he wouldn't go to the church for me because I was on bed rest for a while. So that's my fun story. And I had just moved back from Las Vegas where all my family is. So I was in Washington all by myself, nobody there, and it sucked. Plus, I thought my parents wouldn't be supportive because I left Vegas and kind of ditched the family. So, so Rose, did you want to finish your story?
Yes, I'm sorry, got lost. I don't know what happened, but
No
so I was
worries.
saying that I didn't know that when you bury a baby in Guam, they had a place called at the private cemetery for angels. You would just pay for the service, so that was a very big help. And then later on, I know they always say there's always a reason for everything, and but I would cry like my guts were coming out of me. I would cry um quietly, inside, and I just never felt how like my insights were coming out, like. And then the thing about it was I didn't realize, I hate to say it, but I actually lost my husband the following year in an accident. And the way it helped me cope easier when my husband died, because I had already experienced the loss or death of the baby. So that's one thing that I mean, it doesn't get easy, but I feel like losing the baby first and going through everything crazy, it made me really um, go through what I did with my husband when he died in a car accident. On it, I just had to keep focusing that I had three little kids that needed me all the time,
Mhm.
and you know. So when I look back, I always say there's reason, for everything, and that's it. Might not be a good reason that I lost a baby, but then it helped me cope when my husband died, and yeah, and I always remember how the grandmothers would say, anyone could be your father, but your child would always be your child.
Mhm.
So, and I just remember that when my husband died, I did cry, but it was just different from when the baby died. It was the first experience, and like I said, I felt like everything was coming out of my stomach. I would get so sick to my stomach. But having the family in the house, everybody, just being there. And back in 1990, I don't think we really talked about stuff like, losing your baby, and like, not now everything is talked about. There's always support to go here or there or anything. Back then, I don't remember even having been offered, okay, if you need to talk to someone, even like a social worker at the hospital trying to talk to you after losing a baby and stuff. But yes, it's been 31 years. So,
I'm so sorry about both your losses.
I know. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Rose. It's so like fascinating how the loss of our babies and the loss of our partner or the people we love, it's the same. Even though you've only known this baby for 12 weeks, there's this feeling inside of you that you grew this baby, and it's the same connection that you have with your family. And when an adult dies, there's this we're allowed to grieve openly, and we're allowed to have a funeral and have a big um, gathering where people can come and comfort. And we've never done that with miscarriages in our cultures, and we don't give it the same place in our hearts to grieve. and it's so we just don't know how to talk about it, and we don't know how to talk with each other about it, and we don't know how to offer support when we find out our sister or our cousin or our friends went through a miscarriage. They do it in silence, and they stay silent, and there's this almost like a level of fear and shame. I heard Lika say, I thought I did something and this is God punishing me. And I'm not sure why we do that, or if it's some coping mechanism. But Rose, I want to thank you for sharing 31 years later, because this is part of the healing process that you're going through, and it's so brave of you to share this today. And I just want to thank you, because we need to hear it as a community. We need to know that it's okay to talk about it. And Lika, thank you for sharing your story of your twin. And I wish there was a second Mia running around too. So it makes sense. There's so much love there. Um, can I ask Lika and Rose, like, what kind of support were you yearning for during that time?
For the dad to go to church for me when I wasn't allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
We fought every day, and he was just adding to my tension, not understanding that he was also causing problems in continuing on with my pregnancy. And that was hard. Like, okay, every single day, every moment of every day, I just prayed to God, please let this baby be born. Take me after, but let this poor baby be born. She didn't do anything, because I knew it was girls, um or because I always know what my kids are. But so he wasn't helpful, and I wish my mom and I were on better terms during that time, so I could have called her,
Mm-hmm.
because they were really really upset when I left Vegas. But I wanted to move to Washington because I thought it was better for kids. So they didn't. Nobody understood. They just thought I was running away again, and because I did run away when I was in high school, so they called me the runaway. But I was trying to be a better mom, a better parent. So having family here would have meant everything, and being able to talk about it and not feel guilty that it was my fault that I did something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was for me. It was I did it. It was my fault. I wasn't a good mom. I didn't do something. I was impatient with my little toddlers. Because I had two toddlers then, or I was just a bad daughter. So
Yeah. Thank you.
being able to
With me, in Guam, being an island, being small, whenever a baby died, uh, well, if it was a miscarriage, it was a different thing. But whenever a baby died, like my baby was 3 hours old, so I actually got to put her in a casket and everything. But normally in the island, they would say, "Oh, you know, the baby doesn't have to have blah blah blah." When an adult dies, they have this 9-day rosary, a full blown funeral, and everything. But
Yeah.
for the baby, because they say the baby's an angel, blah blah blah, they don't. Most people won't have a funeral, which I did, but I didn't do the full blown thing that we did when my husband died.
Yeah.
We just did that, the one day, take her home, pray, and then take her to the cemetery. So those were, like, back then. That was, like I said, 31 years ago. It was very different, compared to now. I see a lot of my different families. I mean, even if it was a miscarriage, they still had like a little funeral service for the baby. I remember my one of my friends had a miscarriage in the hospital, and I said, "Oh, so where did you guys put the baby?" And she said, "Oh, we just left the baby at the hospital." And I said, "What?" And this is in Guam. She goes, "Yeah, when you have a miscarriage and they take the baby out, they just put all those, um, they call they just call it, they just put them all together and then they do whatever mass burial for them, and the hospital does it. So I was like, that's a baby no matter what. So I'm just glad that I was able to, at that time, um, give the baby a resting place, even though she's considered an angel.
Yeah.
So, and thank you for having me. I've I was really hesitant, but then I also wanted to share how, like, in the 90s, how we say, I'm 7 months pregnant, I'm not trimester. I don't even get the trimester thing. I'm always dividing by four. So, yeah. So it just makes me laugh when my girls have their babies and stuff like that. It's just, but I just wish, like now, they always say they can see what's wrong with the baby, right? Through ultrasound and all that, which is really good. But then I also had a niece that had a baby in July. They never knew anything was wrong with the baby, but now the baby was born 3 months earlier, and she has all types of complications. So, which makes you wonder, back in the day, we had ultrasound, but my baby wasn't detected that there was a problem. My niece just had her baby in July. They didn't detect the baby had problems. So it's just, I don't, we, it's just, I don't know. That's, but thank you for having me here.
Thank you for being here. So appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so sorry for your losses. I'm just thinking you hit a earlier this week. I was asked to translate something that had to do with our prenatal and maternal services that we give as the PI Health Board, and I had to ask my mom for some certain words like postpartum, prenatal, because in my language, I'm Tongan. We don't really have like we do. So when I finally found the word for miscarriage and I said it in my language, my heart sunk because like it felt like wrong to translate this. So now I'm paranoid about giving the translation out. But I was paranoid because a lot of women, like including my mother, don't talk about the miscarriages, right? So the shame is there. So they're like
Yeah.
already judged, like the community's already like, oh, she lost a baby because this like A through Z or whatever. But like it's just interesting to hear um, what you both have been through and how it resonates across our communities.
Mhm.
Truly. Yeah. Don't be paranoid, Netta. You're doing good work.
No, it's just like one of
Mhm.
those things, right? When we talk about breaking generational curses, I was
Yes.
in that like a small moments of like, oh, don't say it because you're gonna disrespect your language and your people. But really, I should say tamato. Sorry, that's the translation for miscarriage. I should say it so people know that this is what our women go through. Um,
Mhm.
this is what our birthing parents go through. Uh, and now I'm thinking of my mom telling me back in the 90s, after my sister, she had, I forgot how far along she was, but she did have a miscarriage. But her story was like, yeah, I was just sitting in the car and I was just bleeding everywhere. And I was like, so like you weren't scared or anything? And she's like, I didn't know it was a miscarriage until years after. She just thought that, there was just like she had a abnormal period at one time or something. And then so I totally can understand or see why people in our communities didn't have the support really to figure out that that's what was happening to them.
Yeah. Especially with early pregnancy loss. Um, I've heard, so this is what we see is um, the bleeding, the cramping, and then we do a blood draw, and we'll see, are there HCG levels going up or down? If they're going up, that means they're continuing to grow a baby. But if it starts to, shrink, then we know that they're losing the baby. And so it doesn't just happen in early pregnancy. It could happen at like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 4 weeks. So it would feel like, oh, I wonder if my period was just late. But the cramping is just so, it's a different kind of cramping. It's like a
Your
fall on
baby.
the floor, rolling across the floor, screaming, cramping. Um, and then the bleeding just kind of stops, after a few hours, like horrible hours. You think, okay, maybe I can go to work the next day. So you go to work the next day, and you go to the bathroom, and you actually can see the tissue in your pad. And at this point, at 8 weeks, I'll just tell you what it is, but it's the fetus is about the size of a gummy bear, and you can actually make out the eyes and the face and the little paws, and the little, and sometimes you just need to see that, and know, okay, I did have a baby in me. I grew this baby, and oftentimes you just flush it down, because you're in the bath. It looks like part of your period. Um, if you happen to get that tissue and it's complete, there are tests now that we can send to the lab, and we can get a little bit of information. And it's not going to tell us necessarily like why or how did this happen, but sometimes it might give you some indicators of what's going on. It's really hard to collect this tissue. I've tried a couple of times, and so you have to have the placental sac, um, and part of the yolk sac, which is hard because, like Lika said, it's a ton of blood that comes through, and there's a lot of goop that comes through. So it's really hard. But if you feel like you actually have the tissue and you want to know some more information, there is science now that we could try to gather more information. Um, Betty and I talked a little bit about the technical stuff of what happens during a loss, and if is this a good time for me to talk about this? Okay, because let me tell you, when you when you have a stillborn in the hospital, it is just, or at birth, it is really hard to have to be in the moment of, you went in with a healthy live baby that was kicking and having contractions, and then leaving, like Rose said, for the night, and preparing to put your baby in a casket is just a difference. It's a whole other level that you just can't prepare yourself for. So I'm going to just tell you what we do in the case of a loss, a stillborn loss. And if this is something that is uncomfortable, please feel free to, come back after when Lika's talking. and, um, but something that we had to go through just is, um, if there's a moment that you realize that there's no heartbeat, you do still have to help get the baby out. And oftentimes the baby can still come naturally, and you can have a vaginal birth, um, and we we just prepare for that. Your body has to go through labor, just like Lika said. That you felt like you were going through labor. You really are, because when your cervix looks like this, it's totally closed, but it has to open up and get to a place where it can actually birth, a baby, and it can open. So the tissue needs to come out, and so you literally are birthing a baby through a cervix. and through the vagina. So same thing, no matter what period during the pregnancy, your cervix does open up, and then your uterus will clamp down, and it'll actually naturally push the baby out. So so you'll feel contractions, and it will feel just like labor. If you're in the hospital, you can have an epidural and not have to feel the pain of it. And some people appreciate that. Sometimes you'll need Pitocin to help your contractions be strong enough. Um, Sometimes you might need help with dilating the cervix. Um, and then you can have a complete delivery of the baby. So um, it's it's very beautiful. It's a very beautiful process when we help stillborn um, babies come into this world, and we give the family time to hold their baby and be with them. We take pictures, we dress them and clean them, and um, there's a lot of organizations that uh, donate a baby box for families, clothing, and like a hat and some booties. And then we take pictures. There's some cemeteries here in Washington that offer a free like angel site for your baby, like Rose talked about, and you pay for the services of uh, they'll come and pick up the baby and take the baby to the funeral home, and you pay for the casket, and it can range between $300 to $1,000 or so, which parents just had no idea that's what their money was going to go to. So it's just a really hard time to navigate and help families through this. Because at the hospital, you have to make a couple decisions. You have to decide, like, do I want to know a little bit more about what happened with our baby? The hospital will do pathology of the placenta and see if there was some sort of issue of food. Were they getting the right nutrients to grow healthy? Rose mentioned that her baby didn't have the lung capacity. Is there something that happened? And what happens is when, a baby is inside of the belly, their lungs are not being used because it's water that's going through. And so there's this surfactant that actually opens up the lungs, and they like pop open, and as soon as they take a breath, it should be able to clear it if their lungs are strong. And usually a baby has to be around 35 to 36 weeks to be able to clear that surfactant. And so when the babies can't open up their lungs, they just stay shut. So they can see if maybe that was the case. And so here in Washington or in the Seattle area, if you have a stillborn, there's an option to have your baby sent to Children's Hospital to have an autopsy, and see if there's other underlying issues that you can't just see with your eyes. Was their heart developed well? Was there something going on in their brain? Um, Sometimes you just can't tell. And so, for families who want that level of awareness or that peace of mind, if that brings it to them, that option is open to you at home. If you have a home birth and there's a stillborn, we would call an ambulance, and they would send, the fire chief, and uh, a chaplain will come, and then they offer the same services at home for a home birth. So those are still offered to anyone if they want to learn more about what happened. Um, then we can run some tests, and then you'll get your baby back, and the mortuary will go pick up the baby at Children's or at the hospital or at home, wherever you are, and prepare your baby for the burial. Um, and yeah, there's some great organizations out here that can help with putting these all together. And the chaplain is open to anyone. So they usually work with the fire department, and so they'll come to home birth, they'll come to a birth center birth or a hospital birth, and help you with arrangements of what to do.
Wow.
So that's some of the information I know. I don't is did that answer your question, Betty Rose? Okay.
That's a lot of good information. I actually never looked into what causes miscarriages because I was sure it was a curse. Um, yeah, so I didn't know that. That's why the pain, like it felt like labor pains because the cervix opened up.
Yeah. And then the thing is, you have to allow your body to recover just like you gave birth. And so you are actually postpartum, and then in your case, Lika, you were postpartum and still growing a baby, and you had toddlers. Who knows if you were breastfeeding at that time? But you were holding a lot, and we don't give ourselves that grace that, hey, I'm postpartum. I usually get 6 weeks off to recover from this. And we think, oh, just because there's no baby with us, we feel like we have to go right back to work 2 weeks later, right? And so I don't know what it is that we can do to help change the messaging that allow us to have our bodies to recover and to be healed. Um, so I'm going to ask the last question that I see. Sorry, I started talking. But the last question for Lika and Rose is, what are some ways that others can start healing or working through the pregnancy loss?
Rose, because obviously I'm in denial. So
Go ahead, I'll go second.
no, you go.
Yeah, like what are some things that helped you, or were there little practices that you did to help you grieve your loss and also take care of your body after?
Just a lot of prayer and visiting the grave site whenever we could, bringing the baby flowers. I know they say the baby's not there; she's in heaven, but just like going to see her little grave, and it said, Betty, what was the name of what did it say in her grave? Now I can't even think of it. Um, Mayanne's grave. It's something about babies always
She was
do.
so little but so mighty.
Well, say it again, Betty.
She was so little but so mighty.
She
Something
was
to that
so
effect.
little. Yeah. Well, there was this saying on her thing, and it was just, I guess, seeing that and just always thinking that I have an angel in heaven. I mean, just like I said back then, things were different. It wasn't like who, like you said, the only person we got to see in the hospitals, we didn't see a social worker. It was a chaplain, right, that came around
Mm-hmm.
and prayed with you.
Yeah.
And so just a lot of prayers. And
Uh, that that's a beautiful saying. I wish that in the hospital I would have started getting support instead of. I felt like I was rushed out, and the doctor was cold and matter of fact, um, and I was terrified and confused. Because like, wait, what? There's still one left. So, how do I deal with this?
Yeah.
It was really confusing, and I wish somebody had come forward then, and I hope they do that now for parents, because it has to start at the hospital early on. And I hope everybody goes to the hospital because, oh my God, that's a lot of pain. Um, I didn't do anything. All I did was pray for the surviving twin to survive every day, constantly, and try not to think about the other one, because every time I thought about what happened, it was just punishment, and I was going to get punished again, and the other baby was going to be gone. So I was terrified throughout that pregnancy.
Yeah.
But when I did reach 9 months and gave birth to the other twin, I took two names to the hospital with me because I couldn't decide. I really could not decide because I knew there were supposed to be two names. So the nurse picked the baby's name because I couldn't. I could not.
What was the other name?
Taniela.
Oh,
Yeah.
uh,
I think that was the one I wanted, but I knew there was two, so it was like, no, I can't decide.
yeah.
And the nurse was so kind and so nice and so sweet, and like she got the whole story from my medical records. So she was the only person that acknowledged it. Like even my husband didn't acknowledge it. He still doesn't acknowledge it. So it's hard to talk about when nobody acknowledges it.
Yeah.
And like I don't acknowledge it because it hurts. So to think of two beautiful little girls that I should have had. But I hope we are an avenue for parents experiencing this, and that they can reach out to us and we'll connect them to someone. And Tara, you're a genius, and I love hearing you teach us. So I was like, preach, Tara. So I appreciate all this.
Yeah. Betty, did you want to say some things?
Yeah, I had 2 or 3 things to say. I've been sitting quietly because it is a lot, and then I talk too much, so I'll try to keep it under 4 minutes. One is these talk stories are so emotionally involved, and they're so important to happen online because it's like the easiest, most accessible way for us to share what's happening in community. So when we talk about it, it makes other people feel not comfortable, but they feel less alone in going through that experience. And it could be someone who's telling a story from 1990, or I'm always going to be like last century, or someone who's sharing a story from their loss now in the 2000s or 2021. And we need to encourage our families to do this. We need to encourage women to share more of their stories because we're told not to say it. One for shame, one for whatever society blames women for. And it's like, oh, it's a personal problem. That's your problem. It's a medical thing. Don't share it with the world. But it really will help us understand each other and figure out ways to support. And we talked about developmental losses, premature babies, or miscarriages in the womb. I really want to, and I didn't put this in the trigger warning, but ectopic pregnancies are also very common, and people don't realize that when someone goes through a miscarriage, they might not express that they also lose, like, aside from losing a baby, they might lose an organ with it. And if you sit and think about it, it's like, oh, I just dealt with something. And then I also have only one fallopian tube left. So that's another journey or point of that grieving process to overcome. And I bring that up because I've met so many friends before who have shared that with me. And I was too young and didn't know. I wasn't in this birthing world yet. And I didn't say anything. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I'm sure now, having experienced that myself, it would have been better to be like, how are you feeling? How are you doing? So sharing the stories and telling people how to react to news like this is really, really a point that I wanted to come across with and say, I think in the past, I would have been like afraid or hesitant to go towards someone who just experienced loss, but because I'm scared to offend them, because we're told not to talk about sad things, like keep it positive, or say, well, at least you got the rest of your life. Those are really common things our communities have raised us to just keep living, keep going, pushing forward, and not to help dwell on the past. So I encourage people who see this talk story and come across others who experience pregnancy or infant loss to just sit and listen to what they have to say. And then the other thing is on the HR side, if you are working, please ask your HR director or your supervisor for bereavement leave or some time off. Take that time to heal, like Tara said. Your body is physically healing, you're emotionally healing, and you just need to get into that right space. So take time. I know, especially now in our generation, and I'm saying for like younger or newer mothers who might experience this, work doesn't always tell you that you can take leave. So you have to speak up for yourself. And that's why we need to share stories so that we can learn about the things that what resources are available to us. And I think those were my 2 points. I know I said 3. I have mom brain right now, which is a real thing. If you don't know, mother's brains change. My partner was like, when does it go back? And I was like, it's permanent. I don't think it goes back. So yeah, those two things is ectopic pregnancies are so common. Miscarriages are so common. Infant loss is so common. We don't speak about it enough to share that we're not alone in that journey, or to teach others how to be supportive of someone in our family that goes through it, because it's not unfortunately not uncommon for that. And then take the time and ask your employers and to heal physically and emotionally. That's all I wanted to say. I'm sure something else, but it's like 8 more minutes left.
Thank you, Betty. I wanted to just share some of the resources that Mary helped to gather. So I also talked to my midwives, and I was like, okay, what are some of the resources that we use? And I'll be honest, my midwives are amazing. And so if you find yourself with a provider that's not listening to you, call us for a free consultation, because, you know, even if you're just going through loss, one of the midwives says, I'll talk to you on the phone till 2 a.m. in the middle of the night so that you can cry with somebody. We've all done it. I've done it too. And we would rather you call in the middle of the night and get some help than to wait at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. for the office to open. So we have support for you. Mia is working on putting some links on the website. There's Perinatal Support Washington, that has a warm line, who's also open 24/7. So if there's something that you want to, that you're scared about and you just didn't feel heard when you went to the ER and they just send you home, they're like, oh, it'll go away. This too shall pass. It's scary. And I want to acknowledge that. So Rainier Valley Midwives is here to help. Perinatal Support Washington can help you. And then to just close a little bit with some guidance from Georgetown University School of Nursing, they gave some tips on how to heal from this moment. And so they said, continue to care for your body, stay hydrated, move your body, light exercise or dancing brings the happy hormones in. So eat well, sleep if you can. Remember that you can get pregnant again. Acknowledge the pregnancy existed. It can bring closure. Consider memorializing the baby in whatever way feels right for yourself or your family. And then go back to the things that you enjoyed before the loss. Ways to help support your partner, because we didn't even have a chance to really dig deeper into partners during this time, but reaffirm the loss isn't your partner's fault. Talk, listen, and process together. And then grief looks different for everyone. So be aware of your partner's emotional and mental health and make it a priority to meet each other's needs. So, you know, my prayer and my wish for all of us is that we can show up for each other, that we can take care of each other, that we are not alone going through these hard times. But, you know, you have your sisters right here And I love the work that I do and this opportunity to be with all of you. I'm grateful for this talk story. Betty Rose, this is a hard topic. I was wishing we could just talk about baby showers, but we can talk about hard things and we can do it together. And I appreciate this circle so much. Rose, I love you so much because I already know your daughter and I know that she came from someone so amazing, and to hear your background and your strength has been so powerful. So thank you. And Lika, thank you to you for being so vulnerable and sharing such a hard moment with all of us and for trusting us with your stories. That is so beautiful. So I just want to thank all of you. Netta, Betty Rose, thank you.
Tara, you're amazing. And Betty, I appreciate those points that you made too. Those are important. And Rose, all our aloha to you, and my condolences again for your loss. That's hard. And now I'm gonna go cry.
Good.
Netta, you look beautiful, Netta.
Thank you. Rose, did you want to say something? I saw your mic. Sorry, I saw your mic unmute.
I was going to just say thank you again.
Oh. No, thank you, ladies, for being transparent and just showing the community how to show up for each other in these circumstances. So I appreciate you and your energy and your time in this space. Um, if anyone has any last words before we go, feel free to say. I see Betty just like.
Can you see my hand go like this to the thing? Like, when do I nicely come in and say thank you all for making the time today? I know I was called out in the earlier beginnings of when Betty just asked me 3 hours ago. Thank you. Which was maybe 1 hour less for Tara, so thank you. And another hour less for Alika, so thank you. And Netta also coming in from another meeting, and Mia on the back end with all the banners. I really appreciate you guys creating the health boards that people like me can come and learn from our other sisters, brothers and sisters, because we're families and we all support each other and we all grieve together. It's not just one. And so I really appreciate making this happen. October is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, so we're getting ahead of the ball. Next month, there's going to be a lot of articles coming out, and I hope that our community remembers things that Rose and Lika and Tara and Nata have shared today.
Yes. So if you heard, feel free to reach out to any of us today. Reach out to the services that were mentioned. Just and give your honest feedback on better ways to help heal our community. So yeah, I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the week and have a beautiful set of intentions for the month of October this weekend. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.